No legal documents or anything drawn up to that effect? No. What was the agreement that you and Arlen had at this point? I thought I explained it, but the agreement was that he would continue doing the work on the building, putting material and labor into the building, and continue making payments. And when I finally sold out, we would deduct whatever that amount was from the total of my interest in the property. He would deduct from my equity in the property. Let me stop you again. You're tapping. That bothers most court reporters, so don't tap. Could you repeat that? I lost my train of thought. That's fine. Let me understand what your agreement was with Laura Coffey. And I think you told us, and again, I don't want to misstate your testimony. You told us at some point in time you found out that Laura Coffey wanted to sell out, so she was going to discount your mortgage. And usually when people discount the mortgage, they want the money right away, correct? That's right. Was there any agreement you would pay the money within 60 days, 6 months, what? Not to my knowledge. We explained the problem to Laura and told her we could only get a loan for a certain amount of money, and the best we could do is make payments to her until we paid her off. And it was to my understanding that she said that would be okay. So she was willing to discount the note and still allow you to make payments. I think she was going to charge us interest on the remainder. And had you agreed that you would come up with this certain amount of money for her to discount this note? Objection, Your Honor. It's been asked and answered. I don't believe so, Your Honor. You can ask whether or not there was a new agreement, whether it was different from the $55,000. I think that's the direction I'm headed, Your Honor. I apologize. We understand that it was $55,000, but was there any new agreement that you could pay less than the entire $55,000 in order for her to discount that mortgage to you? No. I don't think she didn't seem to be upset, as far as I know, that we wouldn't get the whole amount. It was just fact that we couldn't raise the rest of the money, so she was willing to deal with it at that time. You gave Laura $30,000 cash. I don't know if it was cash. I think it might have been a cashier's check. I'm not sure. It was a cashier's check? I think it was. So somewhere there would be some evidence of that $30,000, probably? Probably right. Does Arlen have it? I don't know if he has or not. All right, starting point, anyone? Okay, start with question. What is the amount reflected that you borrowed? 5 minute? Question. And these are the escrow instructions. And the 10 minute? Question. Well, you are aware, sir, Good morning, Mr. Vasquez. Good morning. Have you ever been called Jonah? No. Have you ever been called Oscar? No. How about Leonardo? No. How about Oscar? Yes. Now, are you familiar with a woman by the name of Rosa Maria Uribe? Yes. Can you tell us how you came to know her? I went to visit a friend and she was there. And Rosa is the sister-in-law of my friend. Would that friend be Enrique Cabrales? Yes. Do you recall approximately when you met Rosa Maria? Like in '92. Do you recall what month? No, not exactly. Do you know if it was the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year, like middle of the year? When you met Rosa Maria, where was she living, to your knowledge? In my friend Enrique's house. Who else was living at that location, to your knowledge? Sandra and her 2 little girls. Did you at any time meet any children of Rosa Maria? Yes. And when did you meet them? The same day that I went to visit my friend, because she was visiting there too. Now, when you went there to visit Enrique, was Rosa Maria visiting there or living there? Now, the first time she told me she was visiting, but then after that, every time I went there, she was there. Now, after meeting Rosa Uribe, Did you engage in a relationship with her? Yes, we were going out. Did you consider her your girlfriend? No. Can you tell us what you mean by we were going out? Well, we were friends, that's all. We had a friendship. Did at some point the relationship become sexual? Yes. And when did that occur? It was the first time that I met her that we went out. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the answer. It was the first time that I met her that we went out. After meeting her, when was the next time you saw her? Like 2 weeks. Now, when you met Rosa Maria, were you married to Guadalupe? Yes. And do you recall the date that you were married to Guadalupe? Yes, May 21, 1990. Prior to marrying Guadalupe, how long had you known her? My wife, like 3 years and a half, but we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When you first met her? Yes. How old were you when you met Guadalupe? Approximately, I was going to turn 19. Now do you understand some English? Very little. Now after marrying Guadalupe, did you all live together? Yes. And where did you live? At first, well, we were living on Harold Way. Did you live in any location besides Harold Way? Yes, at 621 Carlton Way, apartment 25. Is that where you lived when you first got married? When I first got married, we were living at Harold Way at 5715 Harold Way, apartment 9, and then we moved to 621 Carlton Way because some cousins came and they didn't have a place where to stay, so we got together to pay the rent. During your marriage to Guadalupe, have you lived with her continuously? Yes. Did you at any time live with Rosa Maria while you were conducting a relationship with her? No, Rosa Maria, I was seeing her, that's all. I was not living there. Now, at some point, as a result of your sexual relationship with Rosa Uribe, was a child born? Yes. And who was that child? Lionel. What is his full name? Lionel Vasquez. And was he your son? Yes. Was he your first son? Boy? Yes. But I had already had a girl with my wife. And is Lionel Vasquez your only son? Well, when all this happened, I was seeing Rosa Maria, and I was talking about her with different people, and objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. She told me it was my child, but I was not sure because I would see her with different people. Overruled. The same objection, non-responsive, and a narrative. I'll ask another question. As of today's date, do you have any knowledge as to whether or not Lionel Vasquez is your son? Well, I said yes because everything matched with the birth date and all that. After Oscar was born, did you see Rosa Maria? Yes. To take things to her for my child. After Oscar was born, did you at any time move in with her? No. After Oscar was born, where was Rosa Maria living? Well, I would see her at the house with Sandra. At some point, to your knowledge, did she move out of the house with Sandra? Yes, she moved out of Sandra's house and she rented an apartment. And where was that apartment? On Normandy. Do you know the address? Yes, 1150. Where you were arrested? Yes. Did you have occasion to go to her residence at 1150 Normandy? Yes. I would stop by to leave food, shoes, whatever my child would need. How often did you go to that residence? Well, I would say 2 or 3 times a week. Were there ever times that you would spend the night at that residence? No. Were there ever times you were left alone at that residence with all of the children and Rosa Maria was not there? No. After Oscar was born, did you see Rosa Maria more or less? It was a little bit less because she went to my house to tell my wife that she was pregnant with my child. So therefore my wife had more opportunity to ask me where I was spending my time. Now, you became aware that Rosa Maria came to your home to see your wife? Yes. How did you become aware of that? Because I returned from work and my wife was waiting for me fairly upset. Where were you working? As a mechanic fixing cars. Did you ever provide Rosa Maria with any telephone number where she could reach you? Yes, she told me what would happen if my child would get sick, where she, objection, Your Honor, excuse me, you can't talk on top of the interpreter. I have to hear the answer before I can hear the objection so it can be ruled on. She told me what would happen if my child would get sick and she would need to get a hold of me. Overruled. And did you give her a telephone number? Yes, but I told her to please only use this in case of an emergency for my child. And what telephone number, whose telephone number was that? the telephone number of my brother-in-law, Jesus. At that time, did you have a telephone? No, my brother-in-law lived at the other end of the building, that was all. Now, the times that you would go over to Rosa Maria's apartment on Normandy, did you have an occasion to see Martin and Cerise? Yes. And did Rosa Maria have any other children besides Martin and Cerise? Desiree, a little girl, and at that time she had Lionel and Rosemary. Now the little girl that they had was mine. With regard to Martin and Cerise, were there ever times when you were at Rosa Maria's home and you would administer punishment to Martin or Cerise for misbehaving? No, I never. I never punished anybody there. I had no right to do that. Tell me, how did Martin and Cerise and Desiree, how did they refer to you, Lionel or Lionel's father? And did they ever call you Daddy? 2 or 3 times they tried to tell me Daddy, and Rosa asked me if that would be all right. It didn't bother me, but I told her to please not have them call me that. With regard to that, the raising or child rearing of Martin, Cerise, and Desiree, did you ever intervene as parent? Objection, vague, sustained. Ready? Good morning, Mr. Vasquez. Good morning. Have you ever been called Jonah? No. Have you ever been called Oscar? No. How about Leonardo? No. How about Oscar? Yes. Now, are you familiar with a woman by the name of Rosa Maria Uribe? Yes. Can you tell us how you came to know her? I went to visit a friend and she was there, and Rosa is the sister-in-law of my friend. Would that friend be Enrique Cabrales? Yes. And do you recall approximately when you met Rosa Maria, like in '92? Do you recall what month? No, not exactly. Do you know if it was the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year, like middle of the year? When you met Rosa Maria, where was she living, to your knowledge? In my friend Enrique Cabrales' house. Who else was living at that location, to your knowledge? Sandra and her 2 little girls. Did you at any time meet any children of Rosa Maria? Yes. And when did you meet them? The same day that I went to visit my friend, because she was visiting there too. Now, when you went there to visit Enrique, was Rosa Maria visiting there or living there? The first time she was visiting, but then after that, every time I went there, she was there. Now, after meeting Rosa, did you engage in a relationship with her? Yes, we were going out. Did you consider her your girlfriend? No. Can you tell us what you mean by we were going out? Well, we were friends, that's all. We had a friendship. Did at some point the relationship become sexual? Yes. And when did that occur? It was the first time that I met her that we went out. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the answer. It was the first time that I met her that we went out. After meeting her, when was the next time you saw her? Like 2 weeks. Now, when you met Rosa Maria, were you married to Guadalupe? Yes. And do you recall the date that you were married to Guadalupe? Yes. May 21, 1990? Yes. Prior to marrying her, how long had you known her? My wife, like 3 years and a half, but we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When you first met her? Yes. How old when you met Guadalupe? Approximately, I was going to turn 19. Now, do you understand some English? Very little. Now, after marrying Guadalupe, did you all live together? Yes. And where did you live? At first, well, we were living on Harold Way. Did you live in any location besides Harold Way? Yes, at 621 Carlton Way, apartment 25. Is that where you lived when you first got married? When I first got married, we were living at Harold Way at 5715 Harold Way, apartment 9, and then we moved to 621 Carlton Way because some cousins came and they didn't have a place where to stay, so we got together to pay the rent. During your marriage to Guadalupe, have you lived with her continuously? Yes. Did you at any time live with Rosa Maria while you were conducting a relationship with her? No. Rosa Maria, I was seeing her, that's all. I was not living there. Now, at some point, as a result of your sexual relationship with Rosa Uribe, was a child born? Yes. And who was that child? Lionel. What is his full name? Lionel Vasquez. And was he your son? Yes. Was he your first son? Boy? Yes. But I had already had a girl with my wife. And is Lionel Vasquez your only son? Well, When all this happened, I was seeing Rosa Maria, and I was talking about her with different people, and objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. And she told me it was my child, but I was not sure because I would see her with different people. Overruled. Same objection, non-responsive, and a narrative. I'll ask another question. As of today's date, do you have any knowledge as to whether or not Lionel Vasquez is your son? Well, I said yes because everything matched with the birth date and all that. After Oscar was born, did you see Rosa Maria? Yes, to take things to her for my child. After Oscar was born, did you at any time move in with her? No. After Oscar was born, where was Rosa Maria living? Well, I would see her at the house with Sandra. At some point, to your knowledge, did she move out of the house with Sandra? Yes, she moved out of Sandra's house and she rented an apartment. And where was that apartment? On Normandy. Do you know the address? Yes, 1150, where I was arrested. And did you have occasion to go to her residence at 1150 Normandy? Yes, I would stop by to leave food, shoes, whatever my child would need. How often did you go to that residence? Well, I could say 2 or 3 times a week. Were there ever times that you would spend the night at that residence? No. Were there ever times you were alone at that residence with all of the children and Rosa Maria was not there? No. After Oscar was born, did you see Rosa Maria more or less? It was a little bit less because she went to my house to tell my wife that she was pregnant with my child. So therefore my wife had more opportunity to ask me where I was spending my time. Now, you became aware that Rosa Maria came to your home to see your wife? Yes. How did you become aware of that? Because I returned from work and my wife was waiting for me, fairly upset. Where were you working as a mechanic fixing cars? Did you ever provide Rosa Maria with any telephone number where she could reach you? Yes, she told me what would happen if my child would get sick. Where she... Objection, Your Honor. Excuse me, you can't talk on top of the interpreter. I have to hear the answer before I can hear the question so it can be ruled on. She told me what would happen if my child would get sick and she would need to get a hold of me. Overruled. And did you give her a telephone number? Yes, but I told her to please only use this in case I have an emergency for my child. And what telephone number, whose telephone number was that? Well, the telephone number of my brother-in-law, Jesus Carrillo. And at that time, did you have a telephone? No, my brother-in-law lived at the other end of the building, that was all. Now, the times that you would go over to Rosa Maria's apartment on Normandy, did you have occasion to see Martin and Cerise Uribe? Yes. And did Rosa Maria have any other children besides Martin and Cerise? Desiree, a little girl, and at that time she had Lionel and Rosemary, the little girl that they said was mine. With regard to Martin and Cerise Uribe, were there ever times when you were at Rosa Maria's home and you would administer punishment to Martin or Cerise for misbehaving? No, I never punished anybody there. I had no right to do that. Tell me, how did Martin and Cerise and Desiree, how did they refer to you? Lionel or Lionel's father. Did they ever call you Daddy? 2 or 3 times they tried to tell me Daddy, and Rosa Maria asked me if that would be all right. It didn't bother me, but I told her to please not have them call me that. With regard to the raising or child rearing of Martin, Cerise, and Desiree, did you ever intervene as parent? Objection, vague, sustained. .225 for voice starts with question by plaintiff's attorney. Ready? So you figured at that time, we're talking about the Cherry Valley property, how much was the property worth? January, February of '85, somewhere in the neighborhood, this is my estimate, somewhere in the neighborhood of $180,000. At some point in time, at some time, did you feel that the property was worth less than that? And did you think the property was worth less than that at any time? At the time we bought it, it was worth less than that, yes. Your estimates that you give us today, were those based upon your having talked to Arlen? No, those were based upon improvements to the property. You remember testifying in a deposition when you made estimates to the property? I didn't hear that. And do you recall testifying in a deposition when you made certain estimates to that property? Yes. Do you remember testifying you believed your equity would be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $70,000? Somewhere in that area, yes. So, sir, you make this computation of what your equity was, and this is just you and Arlen getting together and deciding, hey, this is what I want, right? That's right. In fact, you were interested in buying another piece of property a few blocks down the street and figured you needed a down payment for that, right? And that didn't come about until a few months later. At the time, I didn't know about any other property. I just wanted to get my own place. So after you made this agreement with Arlen as to the amount that you would be bought out at, you started looking for your property? No. When did that take place? I didn't start looking for it until I sold out my remaining interest because I didn't have any money until that time. Now, do you recall when you sold out your remaining interest? I believe March 1st of '85, I sold my remaining 25%. Your remaining 25%? That's correct. Again, that confuses me, sir, because I haven't heard you tell us when you transferred any interest. Oh, on the paper it still said 50%. I'm not trying to throw you on that. Just so we can be clear about what the paperwork shows. That's fine. On March 1st, 1985, you quitclaimed your entire interest, which at that time was 50%. On paper, yes. To Arlen, is that correct? Yes, I believe. I believe it was like that. I signed a quitclaim and it was to take me off the whole property. I remember that. And you quitclaimed that interest to Arlen, right? Yes, my interest from the property. I don't know if it went, I know part of it went to Rachel and Arlen got the remainder. I know that. Well, had you ever conveyed any title to Rachel? We went to an escrow office in Simi Valley to have the paperwork drawn up to take me off of the property and put Rachel Wayne on the property. Okay, and this quitclaim that you've testified to, that was sometime in March, I believe so. Of '85, yes. If I may have one moment, Your Honor. Very well. So, Mr. Grotus, you've testified that on March 1, 1985, you went to an escrow office in, I'm sorry, where? I missed the location. I believe it was Simi Valley, in Simi Valley, and it was for the purpose of executing a quitclaim deed from yourself to Arlen to Rachel. And I signed off my interest and Rachel signed on. Well, Rachel, I think, I'm sorry, maybe I should have this marked before I even present this. Will you describe what it is? Yes, Your Honor, this is a quitclaim deed dated March 1, 1985. It will be marked 24 for identification. Sir, I'd like to show you a document entitled Quitclaim Deed. It's dated March 1st, 1985. Do you recognize the signature at the bottom of that document? Yes. Is that your signature? Yes. And what does that document purport to do? I'm sorry, what is it? It's a quitclaim deed. And what was your intention in executing that document? My intention was, at the time we were in the escrow office, is to quitclaim my remaining interest off of both parcels of Cherry Valley. To whom? And put Rachel Wayne back on for 25%. We did them both on at the same time. I didn't learn of her quitclaiming 25%. No question pending yet. I'm sorry. Your intention, as you stated, was to do that. What does that document do? I'm not too familiar with these documents. That's why I went to an escrow office. But at the time, the knowledge of it was to take my name completely off the property in Cherry Valley, both parcels, and whose name appears as the guarantee, the person who you are deeding your interest to. Your Honor, I'm going to object. The document speaks for itself. It's a preliminary question, overruled. You may answer. Apparently, it's to Richard. Arlen. From Richard to Arlen. Is Rachel Wayne's name mentioned in any way on this document? On that document? No. Now, this is the only document you personally executed, is it not? As far as I know, I signed the document to release all of my interest. All of my interest. And at that time, you had a 50% interest, did you not? That's correct. When did you receive the $38,000 from Rachel? I received it at the escrow office. When was that? That was March 1st, I believe. So the same day you signed that quitclaim deed to Arlen, you got $30,000. I believe so. You got it in cash. I don't know if it was cash or cashier's check, but you got it in something we would consider liquid. I don't remember if it was cash or check. And something you could readily turn into cash if it was in the form of a cashier's check? That's right. Did Arlen give you that money? Yes. Did he say where it came from? To my knowledge, it came from Rachel. Starts with question by plaintiff. 200 for 15. Ready? just want to cover just a couple of points with you relating to your testimony earlier this morning. At the time in which you basically no longer had interest in the property, you stopped paying on the property sometime in the early part of 1985, and Arlen continued to pay on that property. This was after you had acquired the second and you were going to buy out Laura Coffee, is that correct? I'm sorry, what was the last part? You were going to buy out Laura Coffee? Correct. I think you also testified that at that time, from that time on, you didn't invest any significant amount into the building itself. That is the building that was being constructed on the property. I might have, but it wasn't any big substantial amount. I might have put in a little bit. At that point, we're talking about probably March of '85. How much had you invested in the building? What period? From the time you owned the property in '82 to March of '85, approximately $30,000. $30,000, approximately somewhere in there, 25 to, is that the amount that you personally invested in it? Yes, and because you and Arlen were equal partners, you both would have invested $30,000 each, anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 in that range, somewhere in that area. So it is your testimony that roughly $60,000 had been invested in the building itself, 50 to 60, not all in one building. We did a lot of work on the house when we moved in, also because it needed a lot of repair. A lot of the money went into the house structure. So if we can separate the approximate amounts out now, you're telling us that some of that money went into the house? Yes, that is correct. How much of that money went into the house? It would be hard to break them up, but I'd say maybe $10,000 to $15,000 went into the house, roughly. I'm not real sure about those figures, but somewhere in that range. So, $10,000 to $15,000 of your share, that's total, I think. We did a lot of excavating the lot to make it level too, and we trenched the pipe. No question is pending yet. Roughly $50,000 to $60,000 went into the entire property, is that correct? Right, from the time I bought it to the time I sold my interest. And your share of that $50,000 to $60,000 would be anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000, correct? And approximately $15,000 total of that amount went into the house itself on the property. Well, the house and the lot, we did some work on the lot too. We did quite a bit of work on the fence. We put a lot of money into the fence. Now, taking you back again to March 1 of 1985, when you quit-claimed your entire interest to your brother, Arlen, and you received $30,000 at that time, right? Yes. And you knew that money came from Rachel Wayne? Yes. And you knew that your sellout price, at least what you were selling out for, you stated was roughly $38,000? That's correct.